My name is Dustin Kelly, but everybody calls me DJ. I'm prior Army, serving as both a Ford observer and a military police officer. I've spent the last 14 and a half years as a police officer and detective in a large metropolitan police department. Two things that I've learned throughout my career. One, everybody has a story to tell. And two, the best stories are true. This is the DTD Podcast. Guys, welcome back to the DTD Podcast. This week, a hero and legend in law enforcement circles. He took part in the largest shootout in FBI history that happened on April 11th, 1986 in Miami, Florida. It's Ed Mireles, and he's on the show with us tonight. Ed, welcome.
Hello. How's it going today?
It is going great. So, you wouldn't think that so many things could happen in 5 minutes, but I think to properly tell that side of the story, we kind of have to set it up. So I want to talk first a little bit about your career early on when you were in Washington and you were working with the FBI. Of course, you were in the military. You got recruited pretty much at the end of your military career to come over. You thought that it was just going to be lawyers and accountants. They told you, no, we have a lot of stuff to do. You finish your degree. And you successfully are recruited into the FBI. You go and you take over. Your first duty station's in Washington. So what's it like to come from the military, go to the FBI Academy, graduate, and then be kind of in the heart of democracy for your very first assignment?
That's a good question. Haven't thought about that in a long, long time. First, the transition from the military to a civilian law enforcement agency was, in some respects, it was smooth. In other respects, it was rather difficult. I had a lot of experience, but one of my weakest areas, if you can believe it, was in the area of law. The actual law, like lawyers, that type of stuff. And I really had to work double hard at the academy. When it came to our law classes, and luckily I had a super roommate. His name was Paul Moscow. He was an attorney out of Buffalo, New York. So I really lucked out with that because he tutored me and helped me and criticized me and called me all kinds of names. When I screwed up simple things like Miranda rights and Fourth Amendment, stuff like that. Stuff I took for granted. But when it came down to actually knowing, what the limits are, what the parameters are, what our authority is, it's very critical, obviously. So that was the interesting side. The organizational side. There was still discipline. There was still a rank structure, which is good. It's always good to have a rank structure, especially in I guess the FBI could be called a paramilitary organization, even though you wear uniforms. I think it's more paramilitary today than it was back in 1980. But it was it was an interesting organization coming from a military background. In the military, you've got E1, E2, E3, E4, right, and so on, up to O1, O2, Officer 1, Officer 2, and Officer 3, so on. In the FBI, it was pretty interesting. We were all recruited, the ages were at a GS-10, GS-11, GS-12, and GS-13. And for the most part, we had the first supervisory level was a GS-14, and the next level above that was a GS-15, and then the level above that was a GS-16 or higher. So basically between me and the boss, there were two levels. There was a supervisor and an assistant special agent in charge. That was it. It's a very short telescoped rank structure. And I found out, much to the dismay of the FBI, that a GS-10 really has the same authority as a GS-13. There is no rank structure per se. It's a pay grade. Okay, a GS-13 depending on circumstances, really can't order a GS-10 around, like a sergeant can order a private around, or a sergeant can order a corporal around. But in the FBI, there was no. I learned that there was no real authority between, a GS-13 versus a GS-10 or a GS-11. Obviously, in the spirit of team play and cooperation, everybody got along. You always deferred to the senior agents because obviously they were senior and had more experience than you did. So in that respect, they led by example, not by rank. So and I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, there, you know, uh, that goes to show you that a GS-10 in the FBI, uh, we really had a lot of authority. I mean, within the organization. Obviously, when you started getting up, into the higher pay grades, GS-14s and above, the authority structure, is a little bit more set and clear. But in the rank and file, it's like, hey, if I needed help, if I wanted to set up a surveillance, I could say, hey, listen, I'd go to the boss and say, hey, Steve, Bill, I need to, I need to, I need to borrow 5 guys. Can you help me out? I said, well, yeah, go ask them, see who can help you. And so I'd go out in the squad area and say, hey, I need 5 guys to help me do a surveillance tomorrow. And if they could, they would. If they couldn't, they had court or something else. They'd say, hey, I can't help you. But it was pretty, I don't know how to describe it, as uh, informal, I guess you'd call it, low key and informal. So it was pretty
Well,
cool in that regard.
a lot of the way that you describe it in the book was pretty interesting to me. You said out of the field office, it was like 50% counter intel, 10% criminal investigation, and then 40% applicant work, which was doing background checks, things like that on people.
Correct,
Now,
correct.
the interesting
Now,
part of that,
now that was in Washington though. That was in Washington D.C.
right. The
Okay,
interesting part about Washington to me was you were one of only 5 Spanish speaking agents there.
correct. At the time, back in 1980, that's a little misleading though, and I made a point of saying 5 Spanish-speaking agents.
Okay.
Okay, now we had, for various and sundry reasons, in Washington, D.C., the FBI has tons, dozens, and scores of linguists assigned to the office, okay, to do various and sundry things for the government, So
Right.
if you needed a French speaker, you could find 10 or 15 but they were non-agents. Okay, if you needed an Arabic speaker, you could probably find 10 or 15 in the office. Or if you needed a Persian speaker or a Farsi speaker, you could find 10 or 15 in the office. But they were non gun carrying employees. So I just want to make a distinction. We did have the languages, but as far as the agents, the 1811s, the gun-toting guys,
Right.
I was one of only 5.
When you talk about the Spanish speakers, is there a reason for that? Because you say there's Persian speakers, and I'm sure it's at that time, during the Cold War and things like that. I understand
Yeah.
why they would have certain linguists, but
Hmm.
I think at that point, isn't that Spanish kind of kicking off in that, I don't think we've quite got to the Iran-Contra affair. We haven't got to the Sandinistas, anything like that. But there were things going on in South America, Central America. Was there a reason why there wasn't that many speakers?
Well, you know what though? As far as Spanish goes, uh, at, if you have any ancient history of the 19, but 1980. I mean, we were in Sleepy Hollow. I mean, comparatively speaking, I mean, the Cold War was going. I mean, there was a serious,
Right.
uh, you know, uh, subtle, unseen war going on between the East and the West. Now, those languages were abundant. I mean, they were like, you could knock over a tree and you'd find somebody behind it that could speak one of those interesting languages. But as far as the Spanish and the Farsi, the Iranian and the Arabic. This is this is right at the onset of the Iran embassy hostage situation. It was just starting, and honestly, I think the whole U.S. government was caught with its pants down. I mean, it's hard to predict where the next flashpoint's going to be in the world, And in 1980, it happened to be Iran, okay, and then all the Middle Eastern languages, the mix, in the Middle East, just it just exploded, So, and then in 1980, um, I knew what drugs were, but the FBI at that time had no jurisdiction into the drug violations. So it was, like I said, it's kind of Sleepy Hollow. Now you mentioned Iran Contra and and Central America. Right about that time is when everything started kicking off in Central America. The Sandinistas, the Nicaraguans, the El Salvadorians, the that whole area just kind of ignited, and then you had Ollie North and his his project. I guess we could call it a project, So, and then that just stirred the hornet's nest down there, and then. You had, I don't know if anybody remembers him, Barry Seals, the DEA informant, who was, they made a movie recently in the last couple of years. I think it was Tom Cruise, I believe he was.
American Made, where he was flying.
American, right?
When
Correct.
he was flying the drugs.
I mean, I was around when that kicked off, and of course you had, and it happens more often than people realize. You have a criminal investigation that dovetails into a counterintelligence operation or a counterterrorism operation. And back then, it wasn't that. It was kind of unusual for that to happen, but it did happen. And poor old Barry Seals, he took it in the neck, because somebody, and I'm not going to name names, Ollie North, somebody leaked his name or leaked some video of him meeting with Pineapple Face, his lieutenants and his generals, in Panama, and it was tragic because that video was singular in nature. And when I say singular, there's only one source that could have come from. You've got 5 bad guys and 1 outsider, and then a video was leaked showing the 5 bad guys doing bad things. It's like, well, it doesn't take a mental genius to figure out. It's like, hey, we're the bad guys, and then there's an outsider, and this video ends up on TV. It's like, what the hell happened? It's like, oh, let me see. It wasn't Pablo. It wasn't Juan. It wasn't Felipe. It wasn't Edmundo. It wasn't Gilberto. So it must have been Barry. Okay, and he ended up getting it in the neck. So. Yeah, it's sad, But anyway, that whole thing, that right around that time is when things started kicking off with the Sandinistas and the drug war and so on and so forth, And man, after that, I mean, they just went into high gear. Spanish became and then you had the Mariel boat lift, right around that time, in the later in the 80s, it just became. Spanish became a wanted language, for law enforcement.
Well, and that's what's interesting to me is that it almost seems like, and I feel that it's still to this day in law enforcement sometimes where we're playing catch up, where our job kind of is to see what's on the horizon, but we get caught behind it sometimes, especially with big operations like that in Central South America. We have a Cold War going on, which rightfully so, we're paying attention to that part of the world. You, at the same time, have during that Cold War, you have Russia and Afghanistan. You have a lot of different moving pieces. And do you think that there was one particular thing that necessarily kicked off that whole Spanish, I I guess you would say, kind of foray into that investigation or into those in kind of investigations. Was there something that kicked it off?
Well, you know what though, I can't really point to one thing. Obviously, the Ollie North Contra project, and then the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. You know, when the communists took over Nicaragua, and then you had the communists trying to take over El Salvador. It was it was a flashpoint, and it caught, and it took it started combusting, you know. And then you had the Panama, you know, the invasion of Panama with Noriega, you know, Pineapple Face. It just kind of all self-ignited. I mean, it was like almost like you know, it just combusted, you know, on its own, you know. So, and I, you know, I'm not an analyst, and I mean, I'm just going by what I recall back in the '80s. Um, I'm sure somebody probably had an eye on it, or their finger on the pulse, and some analyst must have told some boss, saying, "Hey, boss, we've got some problems coming down the road here in Central America." Okay, and it never really filtered down to us, because I mean, we're the FBI. We work domestically. We don't really work, and I mean, we have agents around the world and embassies, but we really didn't work in El Salvador or Nicaragua. You know, where we always handled the fallout, you know, the residue after things explode. You know, so, but I'm sure somebody in the government was probably keeping tabs on events. You know, the embassies and the intelligence folks, you know, and the intelligence agencies were probably keeping good tabs on events. But I'll tell you what, though, man, when it kicked off, I mean, it's like a dam bursting. It just, you know, you had the Sandinistas, the communists, and then the Cubans, you know, always sticking their, you know, their noses in places that you know, it didn't belong. And then you had, you know, Noriega goes rogue on the U.S., and then you had, man, right at the peak. I mean, the '80s was the peak of the drug cartels, the five major cartels down there. I mean, they just started just rocking and rolling. I mean, they were just. I've talked to narcotics officers and police officers in Miami. They said it was just incredible, the amounts of drugs that were just. Well, if you go back to Barry Seals, he was flying in, you know, hundreds and hundreds of kilos of cocaine, you know, per week. You know, I mean, he was just one guy. Okay, imagine all the other Barry Seals that were out there, you know, around the country, you know, in California, Arizona, Texas, New Orleans, you know, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, you know, all these people, pilots and boat captains, bringing it in. I mean, it was just, I mean, it became a tidal wave of drugs, and
Yeah.
it was just like the perfect storm.
You know, they've made a ton of documentaries about that, the Cocaine Cowboys Reloaded, all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. Now, I think that segs us into kind of the next part when you go down to Miami. But there's one more thing I wanted to talk about in Washington, D.C. And I think it was probably one of the biggest things that you did while you were in D.C., and that was the Reagan assassination attempt. Now, what was funny to me in your book as I'm reading it, you talk about it and you say, I think you were 18 months out of the academy, and you you show up to the presidential assassination attempt, and you're trying to be real serious and let people know you're in charge, and inside you were just falling apart trying to figure out what was going on. So if you
may,
can.
I, may I use a comment
Absolutely.
that I first heard it in the Marine Corps, you know, but I think I can apply it to the FBI. When I was when I was in the Marine Corps, I reported someplace, you know, and I forget where it was, but I had this grumpy old ass of a sergeant, you know, said, "Man, look at this guy, you know, he's so new, he's still shitting boot camp food." You know, let me repeat that. He is still shitting boot camp food. That means that you just got out of boot camp yesterday or something like that. Well, when I showed up at the Reagan assassination project, you know, I mean, incident, I thought to myself, man, I'm still shitting academy food, man. And here I am in the middle of this huge national emergency. The president of the United States has been shot, and I was the first FBI agent on the scene, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? It's like, holy shit. And I just walked around, I put on a serious face, and I stood tall, and I walked around, and, I kind of just I'm hoping I exuded the aura of authority, because nobody questioned me, and which is good because the scene was still in pandemonium. I mean, they had gotten all the wounded out by the time I got there, but I mean, it was just, I mean, people were still running around and they were trying to preserve the crime scene because they knew more or less generally where the crime scene was, but they really didn't know how far out it extended, And I think I mentioned in the book that luckily one of my squad mates, a gentleman by the name of Al Garrettson, shows up, and he was a laboratory guy. He was a lab agent who had transferred from headquarters to the Washington field office to work cases. And he was in the first, he was one of the first agents to actually set up an evidence response vehicle for the field, for field agents. So he shows up with this van full of, evidence equipment, bags and gloves and overalls, coveralls and all kinds of forms and pens and papers and little things to mark evidence with on the ground and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, thank you, Jesus, because Al was the expert. And I just tagged along with Al, and I basically became his scribe, because and I learned a lot, from there. So.
Well, two things that happened to you there were pretty funny and interesting to me. One was you looked around and you see these blood trails and everything, and you see blood on the ground, and you start thinking to yourself, wow, the president just almost got killed and I'm investigating it. And it seems as you write it, like it's almost overwhelming to you. Like it doesn't shut you down, but you're like, holy shit, like this is the real deal.
It was. I mean, it's like, it was on one level, it was just overwhelming. And on another level, it was like, wow, what a huge responsibility, So at that point, you know, I hate to say it, but I did have visions of Dallas. That supposedly the Kennedy investigation was just totally and completely screwed up. I mean, honestly, nobody. If you, I'm
Yeah.
told that if you try to go back and reconstruct the Kennedy assassination, you don't know what's up and what's down. I mean, you have some general facts, that are fixed. You have the movie, the home movie video, but the rest of it is just like, what in the? I mean, you have statements and events that happened that were out of control and stuff like that. So, I had visions of that, and I'm thinking we cannot let that happen here, And then when Al got there, he said, Ed, we got to make sure that everything is done correctly. All the T's have to be crossed and all the I's have to be dotted, because we cannot be second guessed in court, and which is true. I mean, and everything was very slow and meticulous and documented, and everything was done by the book A, B, C, and D. And I think in the end, there was no question as to what had happened. The investigation was that thorough, and documented. There was no people running off, and doing cowboy things, in the middle of the night or the middle of the day, So, in that respect, it was. There was an incident, and it wasn't in my book, and I'll just relay it to your audience. I was at the crime scene from the time that I arrived. I think it was about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I was on scene till like 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning. So I know that we searched once we got the manpower in place, and once we coordinated the crime scene, and then we started going from point A, and we spread out in a circle, and the circle got wider and wider and wider, so that we encompassed all the potential crime scene area. Okay, up to the wall of the buildings in the area. So we went from wall to wall, east, west, north, and south. That was our crime scene on that street. So I know that we did a thorough job. And the next day when I came back to work, I had a message uh, that had been relayed. I don't know why it was sent to me, but apparently some reporter, and I don't even remember the newspaper. I think it was someplace out of Philadelphia or something like that. If you walk out of the front of the hotel, the Hilton Hotel, and straight out of the front door, off to the right was the crime scene. Off to the left was opposite of the crime scene. There was some, the driveway went, east and west. So on the eastern side of the building, that was a non-crime scene area. A reporter calls the office and said that he found 5 .22 caliber shell casings under a bush back there. And I'm thinking, how is that possible? I mean, we literally crawled on our hands and knees in that whole area. I mean, it was like a grid search, on our hands and knees, looking for bullet fragments, looking for anything. Okay, and then this reporter miraculously finds 5 or 6 shell casings, 22 caliber to be exact. Okay, underneath a bush that was on the opposite side of the crime scene. It's like, oh my God, we have the shooter on the grassy knoll. It's like, oh my God, there were 2 shooters. It's like, oh my God, give me a break. So we took the evidence, we analyzed it. It wasn't even the same type of ammunition that Hinckley had used in his revolver, his little revolver. So it's like, we just put a little asterisk on it saying, hey, unknown shell cases recovered by some, donkey reporter, from Philadelphia. Okay, we we documented them, we put them away, and it's like it wasn't even close, So, but that was that, somebody was playing games. Somebody was trying to stir the pot, say, oh, the shooter on the grassy knoll, there was another shooter. It's like, okay, yeah, okay, thanks,
Well, and I think they were trying to do exactly what you said, was to make another Dallas.
Yeah. I don't know why or what would possess, I mean, especially a reporter. It's like, what in the, why?
I used to think that question, but I think that might be a little different now. Maybe that sensationalism sells. I don't know. I don't know what it could have been, but it's crazy.
It's like, was it this person trying to make a name for himself, or was this person trying to get a promotion, but because nothing matched. Okay, the type of ammunition that we found, what was the type of ammunition that Hinckley used? Okay, and the fact that we had done a hands and knees, grid search for evidence the night before and found nothing, and then mysteriously the next morning or the next day there's shell casings there. It's like, it's like, nah.
Right.
I mean, see that's why we wanted to make absolutely sure that things like that could not happen. If they happened, you knew right away they were bogus. It's just absolute bullshit.
And so after that happens, you go down to Miami. Now everyone would think, all right, I'm headed to Miami. Now we're talking 85 about when you get down there, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So 85, we're kind of in the height of Miami Vice on TV. Everyone's kind of looking at that place. I think that being at the height of Miami Vice, as we talk later on in this story, might have gone against you a little bit in this story, just from what people were thinking. But you come down there, you've got 16 total agents in your squad, including yourself. You're moved to the Miami bank robbery squad. Now, the thing about this was you mentioned that you have 3 gangs of bank robbers there. You have a black gang, a Cuban gang, and an unknown gang.
Correct.
Now, you were saying in the book that at one point there was like 5 bank robberies or armored vehicle robberies a day.
Sometimes, yeah. But see, you know what though? Unless you're in the business, you probably wouldn't know that. Here's a statistic for you. Miami was kind of Sleepy Hollow when it came to that type of crime. At the time in the 80s, Los Angeles had 20 plus robberies a day, armored truck and bank. You think you think 3 or 4 or 5 a day is high. Man, I can't even imagine having to respond to 20 or 25 or 30 bank robberies in a day. It was being, man, you get your frequent flyer miles because you'll be crisscrossing the county, back and forth, So, um, but see, Los Angeles, I really don't know. I mean, greed is greed. Criminals are criminals, but I think that a lot of those robberies happened because there was this new phenomenon. Banks started being opened in grocery stores. And the old places like that. Places where banks normally wouldn't be. So you have a bank in a grocery store. I mean, people think, hey, this bank is wide open, just a couple of desks and a couple of tellers back there. There's no gates, no screens, no bulletproof glass or anything. And robbers probably thought they were easy. Probably thought they were easy pickings. I don't know. I honestly don't know how much money those types of banks would hold, but I'm sure they had some money. But they became easy targets. I mean, that's what happened to that's one reason why there was an increase in bank robberies. So just a weird phenomenon.
So when this increase in bank robberies happen, you have these three different gangs. Now, your unknown gang leads to later on in the story, but I want to talk a little more about the other things that were going on and the reasons maybe why they were happening. Of course, we talked about the banks being opened in grocery stores, places that they wouldn't have been. But it seems almost to me in reading your book that with the armored trucks, it almost was just to see if they could get away with it, just to see how lax the security was on an armored truck, because it vastly was different in your story with the different companies. Some companies, the same guy that worked on the truck was getting robbed multiple times.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You know what though? We talked about it when I got down there in '85. And down to the last agent on the squad, every one of us said, "Man, I would not want to be an armored truck courier in Miami." I mean, your life expectancy down there was like, I mean, low. Okay, because those guys were getting shot and or injured or mugged or kidnapped, bopped on the head, I mean, almost every day. It's like, oh, it got so bad down there in the mid 80s, 85 to 86, that some of the armored trucks started, normally an armored truck has a driver and a courier, okay, two guys, kind of like the old stagecoach, you had the driver and the shotgun, so, but it was so bad down there that the armored truck companies started deploying 3 guys in an armored truck. You had the driver and the courier, and then they added a real shotgun rider. Okay, they added 2 guys in the front, the driver, and the next to the driver was a guy with a shotgun. I mean, that's where the term shotgun. I'm riding shotgun. So. That's how bad it was, and they started issuing body armor to the guards, to the security guards. But these guys, you want to shake them. When you saw them, they would put their body armor on top of their uniforms, right. So everybody in the world could see. Okay, all this white area you don't want to shoot. You want to shoot the areas that aren't covered with the white cloth. Shoot them in the head, and that's where they ended up getting shot. They ended up getting shot in the head most of the time. So they added a 3rd guard with a shotgun. They gave him body armor. So I mean, it was pretty serious. It's like everybody said on my squad. Man, if I got fired, I wouldn't take a job as a courier, as an armored truck courier. No way.
No, I absolutely agree. And when you look at this, and we take the unknown gang out of the equation for just a minute, and we look at the other 2, gangs. Did you see the violence that you saw from the unknown gang in these other bank robberies, or was it more of a let's get in, get out, get the job done? Because it almost at points with your unknown gang seemed personal to them.
You know, I can't minimize the violence that the other two gangs had. Okay, certainly there were threats, a lot of threats, and display of weapons, and pushing people around, tellers, and stuff like that. So, and there was one incident that happened in Coral Gables. I remember the incident. It was on a Friday, 4 o'clock on a Friday. It's like God, what you can just imagine the traffic. Coral Gables is down towards the center of Miami. We were at 100 and no, we were at 38th Street and Biscayne Boulevard. We weren't too far out of the downtown Miami area, but we were far enough away that it would make a hike. It would be a hike to drive to Coral Gables. Friday afternoon, courier gets out of his armored truck and goes into of all places, the telephone company. He walks in, normal routine, walks in through a back door, side door, walks down the hallway to the telephone company accounting office, and I guess they collected payments from people, and some of them were in cash, a lot of them were in checks, but he goes in, picks up his the load for the day, whether it was cash or checks, is walking out, and something happened. Nobody saw it. He was confronted by two guys, and there was an exchange of words. That's what the witnesses said. And there was a scuffle, and one of the two perpetrators shot the guard in the head, killed him right there. Right there in the hallway. They grabbed the bag and then took off. So. We don't know. I don't remember whether that was the Cuban gang or the black gang that did that. So they weren't shy about shooting people and threatening them, but it wasn't a normal MO for them. They proved that they would use deadly force. Okay, but they didn't use it as a routine. Okay, now the unknown gang. I mean, right from the get-go, they started. It became pretty obvious that they were not the average Miami gang. Okay, because from the get-go they opened up with their assault rifle. Fired about 14 or 15 shots, and it's like, whoa, that's unusual. So that right there, and the other escape mechanism that they used as they're speeding away, which was they popped. The pins on two smoke grenades, and the passenger put them out the window and threw them in the back of the car. It's like, well, even by Miami standards, that was different. That was weird. It's like I've never seen anybody throw smoke grenades outside of a car, to hide their escape. Normally smoke is for signaling, or you want to obscure something that's stationary. Okay, not something that's speeding away at 50 miles an hour,
So when these guys come on scene, and it's William Russell Maddox and Michael Lee Platt. Now, right away, you're being told, and of course, we know that sometimes people on the scene, eyewitnesses, get it wrong, or they can get it wrong, or they see it different. But you start getting a different from the Cuban and the black gangs. You start getting these are white guys. These are white guys. They're highly motivated. They seem military like. And you go on that for a while with this, that it's two white males and stuff. But then you start getting intermingled information that, well, maybe it wasn't a white guy. Maybe it was a black guy. Maybe it was. So what was it that kind of caused that transition? Because in the beginning, people were certain, okay, this is what they were. This is what they were. We're positive. And then it kind of broke off into where you start getting different descriptions. Was there something that was happening that was changing the MO that was getting people to look at it differently?
No, what happened was they were, what's the word I'm looking for? They were not meticulous, but they were a lot more detailed, I guess, detail oriented than the other two gangs. These two guys, from the very beginning, they wore ski masks, dark clothing. It was almost like camouflaged fatigues that had been dyed black. You could see kind of there was a pattern underneath the black, dye, but they weren't black. They weren't like your standard what I would call your SWAT black, blouse and trousers. But so they had dark, some people said it was black, some people said it was dark green, real dark green, and they wore ski masks and they wore gloves. Okay, so that really they did not have any skin showing. Okay, I mean you could they had an opening for their mouth and then they had an opening for their eyes. Okay, but even that, a lot of people couldn't tell whether they were black, white, or Hispanic. What they could tell was that they had real long faces, and that long face was uh, a rifle. When somebody sticks a rifle or the muzzle of a pistol or revolver in your face, uh, your your recollection gets fuzzy. All you see is a big hole,
Right.
staring at your face, and you go, you know what, I don't remember. He had a long nose, officer, and it was chrome,
And
so I mean, I'm joking, but in reality, when some people are confronted with death or a threat, their recollection and
right.
their ability to recall things and see things even gets real fuzzy. Okay, but the thing is, even from the beginning, people were just guessing because they wore, you know, they wore. All their clothing was meant to disguise them. I mean, there was no, I mean, nothing was sticking out. Their wrists weren't showing or their ankles, from their, they didn't go sockless, in deck shoes. They took care to conceal their identities. So the witnesses were up until the middle of the investigations, it was all speculation because, like I said, some people said they were black or white, and Hispanic. Other people said, who knows? I mean, until the very end, we really didn't know who they were, or even what race they were.
now, over a 7-month time period, you think that they're good for 15 bank and armored trucks. Is that correct?
Correct, based on
Okay.
their MO though. So
They fired weapons at several locations. You saw that right from the beginning that these guys were not coming to play. They were coming to do a job.
right,
They
right,
ended up killing 2 armored guards.
yes,
And then they killed another man, stole his car. Now, we'll get into that stolen car a little bit later. But ultimately, in total, they killed the 2 armored car guards. They killed the man for the vehicle. They killed 2 federal agents and wounded 5 other ones, 3 critically. These guys
correct,
were different. They were cut from a different cloth. And
right.
so did we ever come? Now I know with the way the story ends, there wasn't a way to talk to them about it, but did we ever come to any conclusion of what kind of started this train in motion? Because like you said, they came on the scene with a bang and they were going at it. I mean, they were cracking at it as soon as they got to it. Did we ever figure out a reason why these guys were so different from the normal?
It's still to this day difficult to really put a handle on them or a finger on them. They interviewed ex-girlfriends going back to their army days. Okay, and their girlfriends would told the investigators that these two guys would, not every day, not every week even, but more often than not, at least once a month, twice a month, they would get they would dress up in combat gear at night, and they would go out at night, okay, with guns and their camouflage clothing and stuff. And I'm not sure whether it was speculation on the girlfriend's parts or whether they actually told the girlfriends what they were doing. But the theory is that they were running out and robbing local drug dealers or pimps in the middle of the night. Okay,
Oh, wow.
because they, that was, kind of like a way to make some chump change, some walking around money, I guess, But so they had this history, according to the girlfriends, that they would go out at night and they would confront other people doing other business at night, pimps or drug dealers. Okay, now what a perfect victim. If I'm a drug dealer and you come rob me, what am I going to do? Am I going to call the police and say, officer, these two guys came over and stole my cocaine. Can you help me, find them and get it back, please? I mean, usually not. I mean, that never happens really. So I think, or we speculate that they were kind of they had a longer history, criminal history, than we were able to really verify, because they had no criminal history. I mean, you run them, if you ran them through the system, an official system by name and date of birth, they had, according to the NCIC, they didn't even have a speeding ticket. Okay, so they were either very lucky or very meticulous or both. But um, that, coupled with their military training, okay, that made them a cut above the average run of the mill garden variety neighborhood bully who turns into a drug dealer, who turns into a robber, that type of stuff. These guys actually had training, thanks to Uncle Sam. Okay, they had weapons training and small unit tactics, training, because they were 101st Airborne, and their training, their suspected past history, and maybe this is speculation on my part. Maybe it was, the excitement of it, getting out there and, terrorizing, people, and maybe they thought they were Robin Hoods. They were robbing evil people, drug dealers and criminals, and nobody, in their mind, nobody was getting hurt. Okay, so then fast forward a few years, and they end up in Miami, and you would think that they would run out and try to you know rob drug dealers. I mean, because Miami is full of drug dealers, but you would think that they would do that, but they didn't. They went right into armored truck robberies or bank robberies. And the thing is, from the beginning, from the first robbery, which was at the Steak and Ale restaurant, let me give you the
That would have been
exact.
October 9th, 1985. It was a Loomis truck at the Steak and Ale.
Right, October 9th. From the very beginning, um, they demonstrated that they were violent, but they also demonstrated that they were novices, because their whole style and technique was just, I mean, it was just amateurish. It's like, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, they were smart enough to attack the guard when he came out of the building, as opposed when he was going into the building. Into the building, he's probably not carrying any money. Coming out of the building, he's carrying money. But you know, they tried to gain access to the armored truck, and the armored truck driver did what he was directed to do. He's not supposed to open the door for anyone. So he drove away. So they ended up firing their Mini 14 at the rear of the armored truck, and that didn't do anything. And then they throw out the smoke grenades, and they take off. So I mean, even from the beginning, you was like, wow, these guys are kind of amateurs. So and then next week, the following week, on October 16th, I believe it was, Winn Dixie
Yep.
grocery store. that was like unbelievable. Right at high noon, 12 noon, in the middle of a crowded shopping center, in front of a grocery store, they end up, in a gunfight. Okay, and they shot the courier. They hit him in the legs with a double-aught buck, and they basically swept his feet out from under him, and he fell down. There were three guards in the armored truck. They had the shotgun system, and thank God the three guards only had 6-shot revolvers because all three guards, man, they spent those rounds. They fired 6 shots each, which was 18 rounds. And then the bad guys, we speculate that they fired at least 12 shots back at the guards. Okay, maybe even 15 shots. And amazingly, only the initial guard that was shot was wounded. Everybody else, I mean, all the citizens and kids and grandmas and wives and stuff, that were in the grocery store and the shopping center, nobody was hit. It was just amazing. Again, we were thinking, what are these guys doing? I mean, they get into literally a 30-round gunfight in front of a grocery store in a parking lot, and they got nothing for it. It's like, what the hell, And then the following week at the Dalt's restaurant, the guard that had been accosted at the Steak and Ale was the courier at the Dalt's, and he sees a couple of guys behind a dumpster that where the armored truck was parked next to, and he sees him and he goes, you know what, I'm not going to be fooled twice. So he drew his revolver and he fired at the individuals that he suspected were there to rob him, and he fired 4 shots and they take off. So again, that's the third attempt. Nothing. They got nothing. They got I think the first Steak and Ale robbery, they got like $2,000. But 3 attempts and they got $2,000. 3 attempts and there's a total of 15 and 30. That's 45, and then the 4 shots from the guard. That's almost 50 shots fired in 3 attempts. 50 shots fired. It's like, holy cow! You got to be kidding me. I mean, it was almost like amateur hour. Okay, but then, things took a turn for the worst. So it's like, wow, not a good thing.
And so we talk about those 3. So you have October 9th, 16th, and then I have the 17th, but I guess it was the next week with the Dalt's restaurant.
Right.
So fast forward to November 8th, Florida National Bank. They make a hit on it, but what's interesting about this one is what they do right after this, 90
Correct.
minutes later.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, again, we're speculating that when they hit at 10 o'clock, they accosted a guard and a teller. They were going from the main building towards a teller island, and back in the old days, I think now they used these air nomadic machines, to, people make deposits and so on and so forth, using that system. But in the old days, you had to have a person walk from one building to another to the little island, okay, to run the drive-through. And they must have been surveilled because they knew when to expect them. So as soon as they got to the teller island, 2 individuals, dark clothing, assault weapon, and a handgun, ski masks, gloves, the whole 9 yards. They came out of the bushes or from behind the building, and they hit the guard on the head, took his gun, and then they stuck a gun in the female teller's face and said, "Hey, open the door." So they took the little pouch that she had with her, the little money bag, and she's all scared, and she's, "Oh, please don't hurt me, don't hurt me." So she takes the key and she's trying to get the key in the lock. She's so scared, she's shaking, and when she puts the key kind of halfway in there, she breaks the key off in the lock, and she turns around and looks at the 2 robbers and says, "Oh, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. I was so scared. You scared me so much that my hand was shaking so hard that I broke the key off, And luckily they didn't hurt her or the male guard. Once they popped him on the head, he was basically docile. So they grabbed the money bag, and based on the count that the bank had, it was $10,000 in the bag. So we know they got $10,000, and they probably figured, hey, that's not enough. So 90 minutes later, they go to another bank, and this one was at 12 noon, high noon, and this bank was full of people. It was like 25, 30 people in the bank doing business. So they walk in there, Miami Vice style. One of them fires a round into the ceiling. Everybody on the floor. The second individual goes behind the tellers, and they ask for the head teller, and the young tellers did the right thing. That's her over there. Take her. It's not me. I would have done the same thing.
Well, I think at one point in the book you say you wouldn't even fault the driver that drove away. You said I'd probably do the same thing.
It's like, that's her over there. Don't hurt me. So they go over there, and they grab her and say, okay, they call her some names, and said, okay, where are the bags that the armored truck people just delivered? And she told them, hey, they're in the safe. And the safe wasn't locked with the steel door; it was locked with the cage. The little grill work. So she opened it for them. They went in there. They grabbed 2 bags, and they left the bank. Okay, now that hit was about $50,000. Okay, worth of cash. So they were getting a little smarter and doing things without shooting up the neighborhood. So they were getting better and better at it. So
now
they
are
were
die
learning.
packs are they a thing at this point?
Yes, they are. Very
Okay.
much so. That's why they went for the bags,
Okay.
not the teller cash, because
Was
the die
because they
packs.
knew those wouldn't have the die packs in them.
Correct. You don't put die packs in Wells Fargo or Brink's armored truck bags. I mean, what for? They'll explode in the bag and it'll ruin all the money.
Right.
So, but the teller drawers, they have die packs. That are set to go. All the teller has to do is know which one the die pack is and put it in the bag. So that kind of ruins the money. So.
Well, that's interesting because I never knew that. I thought it was on both sides if the die packs were going to be just any way to kind of trace. So you're even more than I thought correct in saying that they're getting smarter quickly, that
Right.
they know exactly where to go because I mean, if you look at it, like you said, that's a crazy time to hit a bank at noon. It's going to be full.
Right.
There's going to be traffic everywhere. People are going to be eating lunch, but they knew exactly how to get in and get out.
Yeah. So, it became obvious that they were doing their homework, because if you go back to the 10 a.m. Bank guard and teller at the island, they had to know the schedule because they were waiting for them, so there had to be some surveillance involved there. Okay. So they knew exactly when to be there and exactly where to go to accost them. So they were getting smarter.
And so January 10th, we moved to that one, Continental Bank. There are shots fired there. So they're back in kind of firing and being very forceful. 4 days later on the 14th, you are kind of really, this is where the investigation's kind of catching up to them. You are looking for some areas that you think that they might have taken the cars from, or the investigation's kind of narrowing in on them. You don't really have that chokehold on them yet, but you're moving in very much so.
We were getting closer, and it's a reality of life, but it's kind of a sad commentary on life itself or, the profession. Very rarely do you solve a crime or solve a series of crimes with just one event. Okay. It almost takes several events for you to be able to get enough evidence physical evidence and eyewitness evidence, and just other intuitive things that you see and learn, with experience and stuff. So by this time we had 5 incidents. Okay. And we were getting more and more evidence and more of a profile for these guys. So we were starting to narrow in on these guys, but it wasn't. We weren't quite there. We speculated that these guys were, I guess you would call them militia. Not in today's terms, you would call them militia. Back in the day, it was just the beginning, just at the beginning stages of what people call survivalists. Okay, so there was no such animal, as a survivalist or a militia guy member, or anything like that. But if you understand what I'm saying, we were starting to kind of figure out that these are the types of people that we were dealing with. Okay, a person with a survivalist mentality or a militia mentality or a military background, So, and we started kicking things around and say, well, maybe we have, maybe it's some military folks from Homestead Air Force Base, which is about 20-30 miles south of Miami, So, we kind of played with that idea, and then we said, well, maybe it could be retired guys, retired military guys, because these guys were, like I said, they were a cut above, your street, criminal. Okay, their style, their tactics. It was just they were too. I don't want to say precise, but they were obviously from a performance standpoint, they were a lot more polished and experienced than the average, street rat, So, but now getting back to the case, finally taking a turn for us on March 1st, 1986. Oh, let's go back to the robbery on the 10th. We recovered the gold Monte Carlo that they were using. We had descriptions. The car was gold. The car was yellow. The car was green. The car was brown. So we had various descriptions. We really couldn't put a color on it. It was 2 doors. It was 4 doors. That type. So again, people under stress, don't necessarily make the best witnesses. But on the January 10th robbery, the robbery car was recovered, and that's when the FBI found out that the car had belonged to Emilio Brielle, and I went to interview the Brielle family in central Miami, and I found out that he was a young man. He was probably about 21 or 22 years old, I believe. He had gone target shooting at the Everglades, and he never came back. And unfortunately, on March 1st, they found some human remains in the Everglades, and the remains were positively identified as Emilio Brielle. So he had gone out to target practice and ended up getting killed. He had a bullet hole right in the middle of his forehead, right here.
So they executed him.
They just basically, murdered him. So simple.
Now, was there ever a point where you're doing this with Brielle and you think that family is possibly involved in this?
Initially I suspected that Emilio may have been part of the gang, because I think I may have mentioned it in the book. There was something odd about when we ran the tags, and Metro told me that it had been a Miami PD case, not a Metro County PD. They said something was off on the case, and as when I interviewed the family, it was just a matter of language barrier. Spanish versus English. And they're trying to fill out English forms, and they don't speak English, and it was just a comedy of errors. And once I interviewed the mom and dad, I came to the conclusion, 100% conclusion, that the kid was not involved. Because he was a missing person. He disappeared, and then sure enough, About 45 days later, they find his body, his remains in the Everglades. So it was an unfortunate ending to an already bad situation. So, but then continuing with the Everglades, about 10 days later, on March 12th, Jose Colazo was at the same location in the Everglades, target practicing, where Emilio Brielle had disappeared. Okay, so, and Jose Colazo didn't know anything about it, so he just went out there. He had his 22 rifle and I think a 22 pistol. He was out there target practicing, and he survived. And that's the reason I can tell you this information. Even though I'm getting ahead of the story. Um, he said he saw a white pickup truck driving to the Everglade clearing where he was shooting, and he looked over and saw two white guys, in the truck. And they got out, and he's pointing in a certain direction, saying, "Hey, I'm shooting this way." And they kind of acknowledge, in other words, you don't want to be shooting this way, and somebody else is shooting
Right.
shooting sideways towards you. So so it's kind of like a gentleman's agreement. Hey, we were all shooting in the same direction. So he continued shooting, and he said about 10 or 15 minutes later, his spidey senses kind of started tingling, and he said he turned around and there's the two white guys behind him. Um, One of them had a Mini 14, and the other one had a revolver in his hand. It's like, what the hell, And the guy with the revolver said, "Okay, dude, we want your wallet, we want your keys, we want your car, we want your guns, and what are you going to say? You've got a rifle aimed at your chest and a revolver aimed at the other half of your chest. You're going to comply. Hey, listen, take everything you want, take anything you want, take my shoes even, okay, but just don't hurt me, okay? That's the plan. If you comply, let them do their thing, let them take what they want. 9 times out of 10, everything should be okay. But in this particular case, it wasn't okay, because Mr. Colazo said that once he complied, the guy with the revolver got real close to him, and kind of was pointing the revolver at him, and saying, "Okay, dude, turn around and walk towards that lake." And being an inquisitive person, you might ask why. That's what Colazo did. Why? He says, "Shut up, turn around, and walk towards that lake." So and he kind of grabs him and spins him around and sticks a gun in his back. And at that point, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that this is not good. This is a bad thing. And Colazo said, "Hey, you know what? It became obvious they were going to walk me over towards the lake and kill me, and then just dump my body in the lake." So Colazo said he was kind of dragging his feet, trying to keep as far away from the lake as possible. And the individual behind him, kept sticking the muzzle of his revolver, in his back. Hey, hurry up, hurry up. And the interesting thing about Colazo is that he's just a John Q. citizen. Okay, he's just a regular guy. And I don't mean this in any disrespect when I say he wasn't anything special. Okay, he sold mattresses. He was a salesman. Okay, he wasn't a trained professional like a military guy or a police officer. Okay, he was just a regular person. But I'm sure somewhere along the line he has seen some Bruce Lee kung fu movie, where you've got your hands up, you got a gun in your back, and he's probably seen that scene where you spin around to the side and you use the side of your arm to brush away the arm or hand that's got the gun, in your back, and you take it off your center line. You want that gun off your center, and you want it off to the side somewhere. Okay, and that's what he did. It just a chance. But he wanted to survive. He wanted to live. So he did that, and then he gets the gun off his center line, and then he's fighting for the gun. The individual that we later identified as Maddox and him were fighting for the gun. And as they're fighting for the gun between them, the gun goes off once or twice, and then the concussion, or maybe even burns from the shot going off, and the cylinder probably loosened his hand, and then he shot once through the palm of his left hand, and the second shot hit him in the shoulder, the right shoulder. Okay, so he takes a hit in the hand, and then he takes a hit in the shoulder, and the third shot hits him in the face. Okay, and all things being equal, you get shot in the face, and I would say 95% of the time, it's a pretty fatal shot. 95 times out of 100. But this time it wasn't that 5% chance. And I told my when I lecture officers and trainees and stuff, there is such a thing as luck. Okay, and I tell them, hey, you can't plan your life on luck. You can't plan an arrest on luck. You make your plans on facts. Okay, and good training and good tactics. But let me show the audience. If you are shot with this, the trajectory of a bullet going into your face like this, okay, where is that bullet going to go? It's going to go straight through your face, through your head, and come out the back of your spinal cord, or the brainstem. Okay, I mean, all things being equal, However, Collazo was having a good day, all things considered. He was shot, instead of being shot at this angle, he was shot at this angle. Oops, yeah, at that angle right there. Okay, it makes a huge difference. Okay, if you see right there, the round is going to go along the side of my head as opposed to the brainstem. The round goes through his face, through the nasal passages, and breaks the teeth on his upper jaw area, and it comes out the back of his ear. Oops. Comes out the back of his ear like this right here. Okay. For the audience, do not try this at home. Okay, leave it to the professionals. Okay, don't go out in the backyard and say, "Hey, let's try that Collazo shot." See if it'll go through my nasal passages and out the back of my ear. No, guys, that's like a 1 in a million shot. Okay, I mean, think of all the important stuff that's up here. He was lucky because this part of your face is basically hollow.
Right.
Okay, you got your nasal passages and stuff like that. I mean, important stuff that you need, mind you, but it's not like your brain, your cranial crankshaft, and your brainstem, So, but all things being equal, he got lucky. Okay, now what happens when you get shot in the face like that? You go unconscious. I mean, the concussive hit and the stunning of the nerves in your face and in your head, it renders you unconscious. It's like getting punched in the face, by a boxer. Boing, you're gonna pass out, and that's what happened. He passed out. He fell down, and this is speculation on my part. I think the shooter, who ended up being Maddox, saw that the hit was to the face, and he probably assumed it was a killing shot. And like I said, 95 times out of 100, it would be. Okay, so I've been asked, why didn't he shoot Collazo more times? And again, speculation on my part. He had a 6-shot revolver. Okay, they were fighting over the revolver. A couple of shots go off in between them. He shot through the hand, he shot through the shoulder, and he shot in the face. At that point, I think the very last round that hit Collazo in the face was round number 6. That's why Maddox did not shoot Collazo when he was down on the ground. Okay, because I guarantee you, if he'd have had more, he probably pointed the gun at him and went click, click. As he goes, okay, I'm empty. At that point, he's not gonna, open the cylinder, drop the shell casings, and load 6 more right there. They wanted to get the heck out of Dodge because they just shot and killed somebody. They didn't want to be hanging around. They grabbed all this stuff and took off. Now, the interesting part about Collazo, when he came to, eventually he came to, he looked around and he was alone. His car was gone. The white pickup truck was gone, and he goes, oh, God. He probably was surprised to wake up, but we interviewed him and he had to make a choice. Okay. It's like, what the hell do I do now? He was 1 mile, about 9/10 of a mile from the highway. Okay. He was on a dirt road into the Everglades and he had to make a choice. Do I stay here and hope someone drives into this, dirt road full of ruts and trash and stuff to rescue me? Or do I try to do something to rescue myself? And that's called the will to survive, the will to live. And I tell people, I say, hey, nobody can give you that except one person. And that person is you, the individual. And Collazo had a strong will to survive because he said, man, I want to live. I've got to help myself. So he starts crawling. And at some point in time, he actually gets up and staggers. He's shot through the shoulder and the hand and the face. Okay. He's disoriented and in pain, bleeding. And he managed to crawl, stagger 9/10 of a mile to the highway. It's called the Miami Trail. And he tried to flag down cars that were passing by. And I kind of say this in a joking manner, but it's the truth. What would you do if you saw a muddy, bloody person walking out of the Everglades, onto the highway, and he's trying to flag you down? And you probably think it was a swamp monster.
That's how every horror movie starts.
Exactly right. You're not going to stop in the swamp to pick up some muddy, staggering person. It's like he's got to be a werewolf or a vampire or something. So plus Floridians and Miamians are smarter than that. They don't want to get involved. It's like, hey, dude, it's on you. They just spit on by. And this is the honest to God's truth. The only people that stopped were tourists. They were from up north someplace, either Wisconsin or Minnesota someplace, but there were a couple on their honeymoon. They were driving from Naples, Florida, across to Miami to get to a cruise ship or something. And the tourists stopped. Okay, all the other hardcore Miamians, said, hey, pal, it's just another day in Miami, just another, shot, injured person walking the streets, So Collazo, was lucky in that somebody ended up stopping to help him, and he told him where the nearest phone was, which was about a mile back in the opposite direction. There was a Circle K or a 7-Eleven at that in that location. So they drove him back to that area. They called the store called 911, and an ambulance responded, and we had our first live witness to actually interact with these two robbers. Okay, and then that's where we got our description. Two white males, 6'1", 200 pounds, fit, slender, brown hair, mustache. Both of them had mustaches. One of them had a bigger mustache than the other one. White pickup truck. And the fact that they stole his car, we had the description and make and model of his car. Okay, so that was on May 12th. Okay, so on God, when was it? May? I'm not May. Did I say May? March 12th. March 12th. On March, what's 7 days? 12. March 19th or March 20th. A robbery occurred at 136th Street and South Dixie Highway, and we have a law enforcement eyewitness who saw the two robbers running out of a bank, jump into a black car, and when they backed up to get out of the parking space, they backed right up to his car, and he looked at the tag and he verified the tag, NTJ891, and it was Jose Collazo's car. Now, that started tying everything together. The Emilio Brielle shooting at the Everglades, the stolen gold Monte Carlo, the stolen black Monte Carlo, and Jose Colazo. So, again, as you mentioned earlier in your questions, it's like the noose was starting to get tighter and tighter around these guys. Okay, they just didn't realize it. Okay, but we had a good idea what was occurring. So. The rest of it was just continuing to investigate, and as Gordon McNeil said, sometimes you got to make your own luck. So he sent out the squad one day after Colazo was interviewed. He sent the squad out in South Florida, South Miami, I should say, looking for any white pickup truck or the black Monte Carlo. Okay, and just basically, he just flooded the area with agents, looking for a specific type of car and pickup truck, hoping to get lucky and get the tag off the pickup truck. The idea was to take all the tags that recorded and find out who the registered owners are for these vehicles, and request driver's license photos for the owners. Okay, that that's an intelligent lead, because you're actually trying to make your own luck. You're trying to identify who the owners are. And as luck would have it, one of the agents that was down there that day got the license number for an individual by the name of Maddox, a white pickup truck. Just happened to see it, and he took the tag down. Okay, and that was sent in with a stack of about 120 tags. Went up to Tallahassee, the DMV in Tallahassee, that was processed. We got the copies of the driver's license photos, and one of the photos in the pile was what belonged to Maddox. Okay, and people say, well, what difference does that make? Well, it makes a huge difference. I mean, if it had been a week earlier, the outcome of the shooting could have been or the investigation could have been way different. Because you take all the people, the photos, eliminate all the women. Okay, eliminate all the black people or the Hispanic people, eliminate all the old people, and you kind of narrow it down to middle-aged white males. Okay, and then you take, you whittle it down from 120, hopefully, down to like a manageable number, like 30 or 25, 30. And then you take those photos, and then you go back to your witness, Jose Colazo, and show him the driver's license photos of the people that that we developed. And he would have seen the picture of Maddox, because he told us, he said he will never forget that guy's face. He said he was a cold-blooded killer. Okay, and he shot me. He said just cold. He said he didn't have an ounce of feeling in his body. He said he just shot me. And I guarantee you, if we had shown those photos, that we call that a photo spread, to Colazo, he would have picked Maddox out of all those photos, and it would have been a whole different twist of the investigation. We would have had an address, we would have had the description, who we were dealing with, and it could have been a whole different arrest scenario, as opposed to what happened on April 11th. So time and chance.
And April 11th, 1986. This is the day. I want to kind of set it up, but this is where I want to back off it, and I want you to just walk through it, because I think it will be more personal coming from you, because when you first start this, you don't really have any emotion. But as you get into this, 5 minutes is all it is. You turn into a completely different person by the end of it.
I mean, totally. I in a modest way, I consider myself to be a very kind and gentle, angelic person. I'm kidding.
Not that day.
No, not that day. But before we start on April 11th, let me go back to April 10th, because it's important for the audience to understand why was the surveillance initiated on April 11th. Okay, these are the reasons that fate got us out there on that day. April 10, Ben Grogan, the case agent, and the supervisor, Gordon McNeil, are out at firearms training on Thursday. And Gordon McNeil is discussing the case with Ben Grogan. And he tells Ben and says, "Hey, Ben, how about if we set up a surveillance tomorrow, and on your guys?" And Ben says, "Hey, Gordon, I'll take all the help I can get, But he said, "Why?" He said, "Why tomorrow?" And Gordon tells him, says, "Well, you know what, Ben? It's been 3 weeks since the last robbery. That was at the when the police officer saw them backing out of the parking space and he got the tag. It's been 3 weeks. Um, they only got about $8,000 on that hit, and tomorrow is Friday, and the 50% of the robberies occur on Friday. The other 50% happen on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday." So he said 50% of the hits happen on Fridays. 3 weeks ago, they only got $8,000. He said, "I think they're due to hit another bank. And tomorrow being Friday, I think we'll stand a good chance that they might come out." And Ben said, "Okay, Gordon, that's intuitive logic. Intuitive policing, logical." So that's what happened. And that's when Ben called the squad and talked to the bank robbery coordinator, Steve Warner, and said, "Hey, Steve, see how many guys you can get for a surveillance tomorrow. We're going to run a surveillance tomorrow morning from 9 to 1 in Southwest. See if we can catch these guys. Maybe we'll catch them in the act or something." And he explained it to Steve, and then Steve made the announcement in the squad. I was there in the squad area when Steve made the announcement, and he said, "Anybody who can help, because you really can't dictate to other guys, what their schedule is, because if somebody has court takes precedence. Okay, if someone is on leave and he's not in the office, he's away. You can't call him in Atlanta and say, 'Hey, I need you here tomorrow.'" That doesn't make sense. And then other people have get sick or have other things that they're doing. So we ended up with 11 guys from the squad and three guys from the Homestead office, the satellite office down there, and that's how the surveillance started. There's been some comments and criticism. Hey, listen, if you guys knew these guys were going to be out there, if you guys had a tip that these guys were going to be out there, you should have been better prepared. And my answer to that is like, well, we didn't, have a tip. It was like I just described it to you. It's intuitive policing. Gordon said, "Hey, I think they're due."
I think a lot of people would call that a hunch.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He said, "I've got a hunch." He said, I think they might hit tomorrow." And you know what? In defense of us, okay, again, you say, "Well, should have been better prepared." I got news for you. These critics. Everybody that was out there that day was armed with everything they were legally allowed to carry. We were carrying everything that we were issued. Okay, legally issued agency weapons. Okay, I can't go out there and grab a 44 Magnum, if I'm not authorized to have one. Okay, I can't use double plus P plus, uh, Teflon ammo in my gun if it's not authorized. So when people say, "Well, you guys should have been better prepared, you should have had better arms," it's like, guys, we serve an agency with rules and regulations. So everybody was carrying what they were legally allowed to carry. Period. In a story. We were carrying six shots, and the SWAT guys were carrying pistols, 15-round magazines. So, it is what it is. You go with what you got. You don't go with what you wish you had. You go with what you have. So anyway, so the morning, go to the office, and everybody's running around. The squad, getting their weapons secured and the armor, getting notes and stuff, guys that, that are, some guys are apologizing because they have other leads that they're covering that were already set up, either with bank managers or they have to go up to Fort Lauderdale or have to go to court. So, hey man, I'd go out there if I could, but I've got this previous appointment and so on. So anyway, we hit the road and we get to the Home Depot parking lot. I think it was 148th Street and or 140th or 130th. I forget exactly, but we meet at the parking lot and we have a briefing, and we have a total of 14 agents and 11 cars. And we get all the info that's available. The stolen Monte Carlo, black, NTJ 891. We had the Metro-Dade County had prepared the sketches for these two guys, and those were passed out. And we had a description of the white pickup truck. We also had a missing person, female missing person that had disappeared from an apartment complex in the area. And we suspected that she had been killed for her car, which was like, fits the normal MO for these guys. They kill somebody for their car.
There was actually two cars, right? The two possible cars that you could have been looking for. I think it was a Suzuki Samurai and something else.
Correct, yeah. And they actually found one of the tags of the missing ladies in their homes. So, I mean, they did kill this person. They never found her body, though. They were stone cold killers, So anyway, we get the information. We set up the surveillance areas in four of the different spots on South Dixie Highway. It's U.S. Highway 1, goes all the way from Key West up to Maine, so the majority of the robberies had happened between 104th Street and 188th Street. So that's where the majority of the robberies had happened. So we picked out 4 major locations where banks were located, and we divided the 14 agents into 4 teams. My location was 3 agents, 136th Street was 5 agents, 148th was 3 agents, and 188th was 3 agents. So that's the best balance that we could come up with. And the rest of it was, okay, go to your spots. You have the initiative. You decide how you're going to deploy. Because I can't tell you how to deploy if I'm at 130th Street and you're at 148th. I can't tell you, hey, get north of the bank or get west of the bank or whatever. You have to figure out the best place for you, the most advantageous place for you to respond to an emergency. So, and that's what happened. And then, excuse me, at about 9:25 in the morning, Ben Grogan calls on the radio. It says, "Attention all units, we're behind a black vehicle, 2-door, Florida tag, NTJ 891." And I was so stunned. I knew we could run across these guys, but I have to be candid with you. It's like I was stunned when we found them.
Absolutely.
What stunned me the most was the fact that tag, the incident had been in the Miami Herald. The incident had been on the TV news, and
brazen.
The tag and the description of the car was on a bolo, all the way from Orlando and Tampa all the way south to Key West. And I'm thinking, man, these guys are either very stupid or very brazen. It's like I just couldn't believe it. So from that point forward, it was we played catch up, because when Ben finally announced his location, I was at 130th Street, and Ben was already north of my location. So
Ed, can I interrupt you for just a second, because I thought this was where it got really interesting. Before we get too far in the story, I want to talk about, because you mentioned it a lot in there, the domino effect of all of these things that happened that morning. The first being a shotgun, that was supposed to be in a vehicle was actually moved.
Mm-hmm.
You had someone going to the bathroom, another person going to the bathroom. You have Ben not wearing his glasses. You have
No. Ben was wearing his glasses, but he lost them in the sequence of
right.
the car. Okay.
You had a gun that supposedly one of the guys had tucked underneath his leg. He thought had slid out during this entire process. And of course, this is all happening at different points, and I'm going to let you get to those. I just want to put all of the domino effects that you said. At one point, they think a gun has slid and gone out of a car, so that person is unarmed. The suspects had heavy weaponry. It was just kind of a colossal, like, to me, as you wrote it, a perfect storm of everything coming together.
Right. And the thing is, as you've described it, again, for the listener, we were in 4 different locations. Okay. My location, the northernmost location, Steve Warner contacted the bank manager at our location, and the bank manager said, "Hey, you know what? I don't know who you are. You look like a bum or whatever." She told him, and because he was asking her about, "Hey, what's the schedule for the armored truck deliveries? Because that's probably when they'll hit." So she said, "Hey, I don't know who you are. Go away." So he went away. She calls the office and to verify Steve's employment, and then the office verified it. So then the office calls on the radio for Steve. Steve had gone to get some gas, so I answered the call for him. I said, "Okay, I'll make sure he knows that the bank manager wants to talk to him now." So when Steve comes back in service, I let him know. I said, "Hey, the bank manager wants to talk to you now." So he responds back to the bank, and he calls out, says, "Hey, I'm out of service at the bank." Okay, so he turns the car off. Okay, and 5 seconds later, that's when Ben calls out. Okay, that's one. Okay, at 136th Street, Terry Nelson tells his team, "Hey, listen, I need to go to the bathroom. I'm going to be out of service for a few minutes." Okay. Again, it's a separate location. No harm, no foul, right? 148th Street, Bobby Ross tells his little team, "Hey, listen, guys, I need to make a head call." Okay. So I'm going to be, out of service for a few minutes. Okay. 3 separate locations, 3 agents. Okay. And did it have an impact? Individually, no, but collectively, it had a huge impact. Okay. Because those 3 agents, Steve Warner had a 12-gauge shotgun. Terry Nelson had a fully automatic MP5 machine gun in 9mm, and Bobby Ross had a full auto M16 with him. Okay, and could those weapons have made a difference in the gunfight? Absolutely, absolutely. But time and chance happens. The domino effect. That none of those weapons were in play during the gunfight because they just fate. Now the weapons, Richard Manouzi stuck his took his revolver out of his holster and placed it underneath his right thigh. And I've got to be honest with you, I had done that before on surveillance. When I was in Washington D.C., we worked a lot of night surveillances because we were on a terrorism squad. We had a lot of things going. You mentioned, the Central American thing. Well, by 1984, the Central American thing was percolating. Okay, so there was a lot of activity going on. So we were doing a lot of night surveillances, and you're wearing a jacket to cover your weapon, and you're in a car wearing a seatbelt. Okay, if you're right-handed, the seatbelt, is always on your right hip. So if you need a gun, if you need to get to your gun real quick, sometimes the jacket and the seatbelt kind of get in the way of you reaching for the weapon. So I used to take my gun out of the holster and place it underneath my right thigh. but I never drove with the weapon like that. I always, whenever I had to move the car, I would always take the weapon back and I stick it in my holster. Okay. These two agents didn't do that. They put the weapon underneath their thigh while the car is driving. That was Richard Manazzi and my partner, John Hanlon, and I didn't even see him do it. And we were in the same car. I didn't see him do it. Excuse me. So it's just little chains of events like that. Nobody was planning in getting involved in a series of car crashes. Okay. Manauzi was, him specifically was involved in two major car crashes. John Handel and I were involved in a series of car crashes hitting each other like this, two cars hitting each other like constantly back and forth, back and forth. Some point in that sequence of bumps, John Hanlon, when we slammed up against the cement wall, at the end of the chase, his gun slid out from under his leg, and in his haste he couldn't find it, so he went to his ankle gun. Unfortunately, Richard Manazzi didn't have an ankle gun, so he thought his weapon had flown out the door and landed on the street, which in reality it was still in the car. So, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the truth. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm trying to just put it out there. And explain to people what happened. So was it unfortunate? Yes, absolutely. Was it a learning point? Absolutely. Anybody who reads that the little incident that happened will probably never ever take a gun out of their holster and stick it underneath their thigh. So, but that happened. Now, getting back to the sequence of the surveillance. John Hanlon was driving and I was a passenger, and we sped north, trying to catch up with Ben Grogan, which we did. We got up to him at 117th Street. Excuse me. When the stolen Monte Carlo made a right turn on 117th, goes down one city block. He's driving east, and he goes to 81st Road, and then takes a right and goes south on 81st. And goes to 120th and hits the stop sign, and then he makes another right turn westbound on 120th. So in those three right turns, and that's a common, if you want to find out somebody's following you, they say, hey, make three turns in the same direction. And if they're still behind you, they're following you. So at that point, they made three right turns. I don't know whether it was planned or just happenstance, but at that point, they knew somebody was behind them, because on 81st Road, we were going at about 10 or 15 miles an hour on a residential street. It's like,
I think they're on to you.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, wow, it became real obvious, So, but as again, luck would have it, when they turned right on 120th, they made a left turn on 82nd Avenue. And at that point, Ben Grogan called out, felony car stop. Let's do it. Okay. Now, from the time Ben Grogan said, attention all units, until he said felony car stop, was 3 minutes. Okay. 3 minutes to surveillance, 3 minutes to plan and figure out how you're going to do this car stop. Okay. There are two types of car stops, generally speaking. There's compliant and non-compliant. Okay. And unfortunately, the subjects or the other driver has a vote. Okay. You want him to stop at a certain point, and he has a vote. He can say, no, I'm not going to stop here, or yes, I'm going to stop here, or no, I want to make a U-turn and go in the opposite direction. There's really not much you can do to control that, except use force. You can block or crash or fire gunshots at the other car. There's many options, okay, but not all of them are good options. I mean, at some point in time, you may have to actually block or ram another car to make it stop. So as soon as Ben Grogan said felony car stop, Jerry Duff put the police light on the dashboard and turned the siren on, and that's when Ben pulled out of line and tried to get in front of the stolen Monte Carlo to keep it from to block it. So he was trying to block it from continuing to go forward, and at that point, we stopped going at 10 or 15 miles an hour, and the RPMs in the cars just started skyrocketing. We went from 10, 15 miles an hour up to 35, 40 miles an hour in the blink of an eye. And that's when all the car crashes started happening. And make a long story short, we ended up crashing up against a cement wall in front of the duplex. It was 12201 Southwest 82nd Avenue. We crashed directly across the street from that address, and Richard Manauzi had rammed the stolen car from behind because he saw the passenger come up and aim a long barrel weapon at me and John Hanlon across the his partner's face. So he said, "Oh shoot, he's there. He's going to shoot at Ed and John, so I better distract him." So he rams them from behind and he rammed them hard, okay, because the car is propelled forward. And as I told you, we were doing a series of crashes, okay, and he propels the stolen Monte Carlo. He just propels it forward, So we lost all contact with the car, and we ended up crashing against the wall.
Well, at that point, you're face to face with the driver, right? I mean, you guys are within a foot of each other, 2 foot of each other.
You know what, though? If the windows had not been rolled up, I could have reached out and touched him. That's how close we were, because we were actually bumper locked, at some point in time.
And what speed do you think you're going at right now, Ed?
Oh God, we were going, like I said, we were going 30, 40 miles an hour. It was just constant rocking and rolling back and forth, crash, crash, crash. And, forward, backward, that type of stuff, So, yeah, it was at least, I mean, I'm speculating, but it wasn't 10 miles an hour like it was on the other street. Okay. And let me put it this way. When we hit the cement wall, we were going at a good clip. Okay. And I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. Under normal circumstances, I probably would have injured myself from the car crash alone. Okay. I mean, because I literally had to put my hands up like this, and I used my hands and my elbows and my shoulders to accordion, accordion myself, cushion the blow, and keep my face from smashing up against the windshield, So, and unbeknownst to me, they continued to make their left-hand U-turn. Manauzi had already rammed him hard from behind, so he said, "What the heck? I've already wrecked the car. I'm going to ram him again," because he knew that we had to stop these guys. We could not let them escape. Okay, I mean it was kind of like a telepathic signal. We needed to stop these guys. Period. Okay, so Manauzi, when he saw that we crashed and he saw that they were circling to the left to make a U-turn to go back northbound, he said, "What the hell?" I just rammed them, almost like T-boned them at the front end of their car, and they ended up being Manauzi and the subject car ended up being pinned up against some civilian cars in front of 12201 Southwest 82nd Avenue. And everything came to a stop. Everything stopped, and I heard the silence. I mean, the silence was deafening. I mean, because before it was crashing and metal screeching and RPMs and, just, everything that cars can do, in a demolition derby, and then all of a sudden it was total quiet. Okay. And it didn't last long. I mean, in my mind, it seems like it was quiet for 10 or 20 seconds. But in reality, it couldn't have been that long because, I mean, everything started happening real quick. I heard Ben Grogan and Jerry Duff, come out of their vehicles yelling, "FBI, police, put your hands up, put your hands up." And the immediate response was boom, boom, boom. So It reminds me of Naked Gun. Stop shooting the gun. I can't hear you. What are you saying? There's a scene in the Naked Gun. I forget which one it was.
I'm glad that you can look at this situation like that.
No, don't shoot while you're talking. I can't hear you. So their answer was pretty clear, you know. So, and the gunfight started. It was like, you know, like I said, my perception was 10 or 20 seconds, but the reality of the situation was probably like a second or two of silence. And then boom, you know, as they say, the shit hit the fan, you know. So, and it was on. I mean, the battle was on. The fight was on. So I knew where we had crashed up against a wall. That I had the 12 gauge shotgun in my right hand, and I knew that I had loaded it with the double aught buckshot, and I was at least 45 to 50 yards away from the subjects. I'm thinking at this range, this load is nothing. I mean, I'll shoot the agents around the scene before I shoot the subjects in the car, you know. So I said, nah, I got to get closer to use the weapon. So that's when I started running across the street. And John Hanlon ran across the street almost instantaneously as I did, you know. So we ran across the street. He went slightly to the right, and I was going to the nearest point of cover. But then I scanned to the left, and I saw Gordon McNeil, the supervisor, off to the left at the far left side of the perimeter, the line. And I said, well, you know, the weakest spot in this line is on the left. So I veered to my left to reinforce Gordon McNeil. And I almost made it to his position. I was trying to get to his left side behind the engine block of Manouzi's car. And that is when I tripped. my perception, you know, my mind was trying to fill in a gap, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, I couldn't figure out what happened because one minute I'm looking straight ahead, and literally the next tenth of a second I'm looking straight up at the sky, and I'm thinking, what the hell happened? You know, I mean, I'm, you know, going to reinforce Gordon, and next thing I'm looking is up at the blue sky, and I'm thinking, you know, how did I get here? And I'm thinking, and I'm trying to fill in this gap, you know. And I finally answered my own question. I'm thinking, well, you know what? I was coming around the back of Gordon McNeil's car. I'm deducing this. I must have run into the back of McNeil's car, the very corner of the rear trunk area, because I must have cut it so close that I actually hit it with my right hip, and I knocked myself backwards. Okay, because I'm on my back looking at the sky, and I'm thinking, I mean, I admonish myself, you stupid, stupid, stupid for you know, cutting it so close, you know. And then I was trying to use I had the shotgun in my right hand, and I'm trying to use my left hand to push myself up, and nothing's working, you know. And, you know, everything perception changed. Before, you know, I had. Probably 60% of my hearing was intact. You know, I started experiencing auditory exclusion. I had not tunnel vision, but I had narrow vision. It wasn't quite tunneled to one point, but it was not quite all the way, you know, at 180 degree, you know, in my line of sight. But after I went on my back, my whole perception changed. You know, I had a terrible ringing in my ears. I couldn't hear anything at all. And I felt like I was like working myself through molasses. Like it just felt like it was like slower, you know, and everything, the world around me slowed down. Everything was in slow motion. Okay. And if you've ever experienced, you know, fight or flight, you know what when people say, "Hey, things started going into slow motion." And reality is, nothing goes into slow motion. What happens is your mind speeds up. Okay, you are thinking, and your mind is working so fast that your actions can't catch up with your mind. So it appears that you are going in slow motion, So, and that's what it felt like to me, But my hearing was what really caught me by surprise, because I mean, I just like totally lost everything, and I had this real loud ringing in my ears. I'm thinking, God, what the hell happened, So it took me a while to figure out, what's going on. And I'm watching Gordon McNeil's back. He's shooting his gun, and then I see Gordon, kick his gun up, his arm up like this, turn his head up, brings his gun hand back down on the dashboard. I mean, not on the dashboard, on the hood of the blue car he's hiding behind, and fire 2 shots. And I'm thinking, what the hell's Gordon doing? It's like, is he like a cavalry charge? I don't know. I didn't know what the heck he was doing with his right arm, And then after he ran out of ammo, he retreated back behind his car to reload. And then after he retreated, it just dawned on me. I'm thinking, holy shit, Gordon was shot. I just saw Gordon McNeil shot, and later I found out that Gordon had taken a .223 caliber rifle hit right, 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 right through the hand right there. Can you see it?
I can see, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of froze right there, right between the index finger and the middle finger, when he had his gun up like that. Okay, and amazing. How many westerns have you all seen? Especially when I was a kid, the good guy is always wearing the white hat, and the bad guy's always wearing the black hat, and the good guy's too good to shoot the bad guy dead. Okay, so we always shot him in the hand, and the gun, the bullet would hit the hand, or the bullet would hit the gun, and the gun would go flying out of the hand, and okay, Black Bart, put your hands up, so that type of stuff. I saw Gordon shot through with a rifle round through these 2 fingers right there, and the gun didn't fly out of his hand. He just brought it back down and kept firing. But I didn't realize it until after the fact. When I saw it happen, I didn't know what was going on. So he retreats. I'm still scanning for threats, and it took me several seconds, maybe a minute, to figure out what the hell's wrong with my body. Okay, why I'm on my back. Okay, and it wasn't until I had to make a visual inspection of my left side, because it wasn't working. My hand, was, I was trying to get it to push, to put pressure down on the ground to help me up, and it wasn't working. So I had to take my eyes off the threat points and look down at my left side, and that's when I got a humongous shock. Okay, I saw that there was something bloody and broken apart next to me, and I'm thinking, what the hell is that? It looked like roadkill. I mean, literally, like some rabbit got hit by a truck or something. A semi got run over by a semi. It just exploded, and stuff. And um, it was so bizarre, so foreign. I said, that can't be my arm. There's no way in hell that could be my arm. So I took the shotgun, laid it across my chest, reached over with my right hand, and I picked up my left arm, and I held it up in front of me like this, and in front of my eyes, and I'm thinking, holy shit, it's attached. It was attached by the muscles underneath my forearm here and the skin. Everything else was just broken and loose. The only thing holding it together was this flab of skin down here, and I'm shaking it like this. I'm thinking, holy shit, it's attached. It's my arm. So that's when I kind of looked at it. I'm thinking, and I just threw it off to the left side. It landed in the dirt. I mean, there's nothing I could do to it. I mean, at that point, it was just like throw it on the dirt, grab my shotgun, and continue to scan for a threat. And there's something called during these types of events, people have weird thoughts. They're like, hey, did I leave my oven on? Or did I close the garage door? That type of stuff. Well, my intrusive thought was, amputate your arm later. Okay, that's what I thought. It's like, and then I continued to scan. I mean, that's how bad it was. It was intuitive. I knew, hey, you're going to have to amputate your arm later. So just continue working. It's just kind of like, hey, listen, I think I want to have hamburgers for lunch today. You know, how many times has anybody thought to amputate your leg later today? Okay, you know, you know? So, uh, you know, instinctively, I knew that it was a serious injury, but I knew that I could survive for several more minutes before, I was in danger of bleeding to death. I mean, I was bleeding. There's no doubt about that. But again, intuitively speaking, instinctively speaking, I knew that I had several minutes before anything bad happened. So, and right at that precise moment, there was still a threat out there that somebody, bullets were flying. I didn't know where the subjects were, and I was worried that somebody was going to sneak up behind me or around one of the cars and shoot me in the face. Now that would be a bad thing, getting shot in the face. It would be a
Because
bad
I
thing.
don't think you're going to get that 1 in a million shot.
No, not like Jose Calazo, So I'm concentrating, and I'm thinking, what the heck, I mean, it's taken a long time, and then I noticed something out of the left side of my eyesight. I'm thinking I see something flying, but I can't see what's going on. So that's when I realized I'm thinking, oh crap, that doesn't look good. So I actually laid the shotgun across my chest again, and I took my right hand and I went up to the left side of my forehead like this, and I'm thinking, God, it was arterial bleeding. It's like, what the hell? So I'm actually expecting to feel my skull all mushy and stuff up here, and I kept going like this. I'm thinking, well, I feel the bone. So then I took the palm of my hand like this, and I went like this. I'm thinking, it's intact. And what I was doing unknowingly was I was actually compressing the injury. Okay, and when I was doing it, putting my palm against my head, I was actually compressing the injury had split my skin and split had severed the temporal artery, and just a compression, slapping my head like that was enough to put some of the flap of skin over the artery to stop it from spraying. It was still bleeding, but it stopped spraying because I got to tell you, if you've never seen your own arteries spraying blood, it's a little disconcerting. It really is.
What
It's like you said.
is it true that you saw blood squirting like 5 to 10 feet away from you?
Yeah, it was actually squirting past my feet. It was like it was like two or three or four, no, not four, 2 or 3 feet past my actual physical feet. Okay, so it was like squirting, you know, from my head to where it landed. Had to be like 8 or 9 or 10 feet away, you know, and that's a little frightening. Okay, in case you've never seen it
Well, and that was
before.
my next question. Are you freaking out at not freaking out, but are you starting to take stock right now because you look at your arm,
Well,
it's
you know what?
useless.
Honestly, when I stopped when I stopped to analyze what was going on, and I realized what it was arterial bleeding. So that's when I laid the shotgun and I examined myself, and I'm thinking, I am having a really bad day. Okay. When I saw the arterial bleeding out of my forehead, somewhere around my head, I'm thinking, I am having a really bad day. This day can't get any worse. Arterial bleeding from your head is not a good sign, you know. So, but again, when I did this, God takes care of drunks and, and idiots, because when I was doing this, I inadvertently just compressed it, compress the flesh and the flap of skin in the area, and it just kind of went over it, and it stopped the arterial bleeding, because the arterial bleeding was, like I said, disconcerting. Oozing blood is okay. I mean, I can't see it, once it stopped spraying, I'm thinking, okay, it's a good day, so continue to try to survive, um, but up until that point, and even after this point, and it's something that I forget to tell people sometimes, I didn't know what had happened. And it wasn't until I made a visual examination of my arm that I realized that I had been shot. Not once, I mean, once in the arm and then up here on the temple, twice. And the miracle of having survived, that is a miracle in and of itself. But the other side of it is there was no there was no sensation of pain. I felt no pain at all. And that's what was so weird, because I kept trying to get my left arm to move and function, because there was no pain. I had no idea what had happened. So people say, how do you continue to function? It's the body. The body's a miracle. It's a tremendous machine. As soon as I suffered so much injury, so much trauma, that my system just shut down from pain. I felt no pain for the next 5 minutes. I mean, I continued to work and move around and do all kinds of stuff, and I felt no pain whatsoever. It wasn't until after the incident, when everything was solved and resolved, and the adrenaline came down. Okay, at that point, I experienced terrible pain, but at the time I was shot, that was so bizarre. I felt no pain whatsoever. But it's an interesting sidebar there. But anyway, I continued to scan, and if I'm looking at my feet, that would be my 12 o'clock position. The gunfire, I should say, during the incident went from my 12 o'clock position off to my right to the 1 o'clock position, farther to my right to the 2 o'clock, and then to the 3 o'clock, and then way off, to the, 3 or 4 o'clock position, all the way to the right. So I could sense my hearing was coming back. I mean, I still had the ringing, but I could sense that the gunfire was moving to my right. So I couldn't see anything to my right. So I started to crawl on my back, using my shoulder blades and my heels to move, because the cars were in the way. I couldn't see what was going on the other side. So I wanted to know what the hell was going on. So I crawled from beside Gordon McNeil's car around to the back of McNeil's car. And that's when I saw that the agents that were over behind Ben Grogan's car, Ben Grogan, Jerry Dove, and John Hanlon, were all down on the ground. And I saw Gordon McNeil down on the ground behind his car. So I'm thinking, holy shit, all the agents are down. And I saw a pair of legs running from the rear of Ben Grogan's car to the front. So I said, everybody's down, so the person running must be a bad guy. Okay, so I took my shotgun in my right hand, one-handed, on my side, on the ground, underneath the car. I aimed it at the pair of running legs, and I said, well, it's got to be a bad guy. But I said, if I shoot, I'm shooting in the direction of Jerry Dove, Ben Grogan, and John Hanlon. I said, I can't shoot in that direction, because if I miss, I may be the one responsible for killing a fellow agent. So, I mean, I went into a shoot, don't shoot dilemma. And I know my decision was not to shoot. Okay. But when you look at the crime scene photos, I had five shotgun rounds in the shotgun. I only remember firing four. Okay. Whereas in reality, there's five shell casings there. So I fired the shot that I said I never fired, I fired it. And thank God it didn't hit any of the agents. I did hit the subject in the feet. Okay, with 12 gauge pellets, double out pellets, and/or gravel when the pellets hit the sidewalk and the macadam. Some of that stuff, ricocheted up into his feet. So I don't remember making the shot, but the crime scene evidence and the autopsy showed that I made it. Okay, so I kept scooting myself around to the back of the car, and I sat up against McNeil's car with my back, and the subjects were off to my over my left shoulder like this, in that direction at a 45-degree angle. So I actually had to turn around like this with the shotgun up like this to peek around the car to look to see what was going on, and I was shocked. To me, from the time that I had my arm out like this and not shoot until the time I pull my arm back up and scoot and sit down, to me it was 10 seconds. Okay, and in that 10-second time frame, somehow the two subjects had materialized inside Ben Grogan's car. Okay, and I'm thinking, holy cow! It was. I mean, I thought it was like magic, like Star Trek. You know, beam me up, Scotty. Well, somebody beamed these guys into the interior of the car because I'm thinking it was. It only took me 10 seconds to sit up. Okay, how the hell did they get from wherever they were back in the car? Okay, it was again time distortion. The fight or flight plus the shock of being shot, also was kicking in. So,
how long do
what
you
I
think it
saw,
actually was, Ed?
I think it was more like 20 or 25, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. That's how long. I mean, because he had to run forward. I saw him running forward, and he had to retrieve his partner. They had their equipment bag, and then they had to run back to the FBI car, jump in the seats, and close the doors. Okay. It's speculation, 20 seconds. Okay. But to me, it was like magic. It was like, wow, again, that just shows you my perception, my ability to function in the real world. I was starting to experience blood loss. I was losing consciousness, and the shock factor was setting in. So when I peeked at the subjects in the car, the FBI car, it became immediately evident what they were trying to do, and that was they were trying to move the car. They were trying to either put the key in the ignition or put the car in reverse or drive or something, because the driver was leaning forward looking at the steering column, and the passenger was leaning towards the steering column, trying to help his partner. So it became obvious to me that they were trying to escape. Okay, and the only avenue of escape was to back the car up. And if they backed the car up, they would definitely run over Jerry Dove, Ben Grogan, and possibly John Hanlon. So there was a very high probability that for them to back the car up, they would have to drive over 3 agents. And I didn't know what condition the agents were in, but if they had been run over by a car, they would definitely would probably die. So I said, hey, you know what? I've got to prevent these guys from moving the car. Okay, so because if they move the car, the agents are really, dead. So that's when I said, okay, I've got to employ the shotgun. I've got to, make sure I somehow or another start putting shotgun rounds into the compartment of the car. So I was analyzing. Obviously, I couldn't use my left arm, and I'm thinking, how am I going to steady a shotgun? And then I'm looking at my surroundings, and I saw the little lip on the bumper, and I said, hey, that's a perfect spot. I put the fore end of the shotgun on the lip, and I had my right hand on the trigger guard, and I just used the corner, the little lip of the bumper as my second arm or hand, and I manipulated the sights up and down, left and right on the shotgun. And that's how I employed the shotgun to fire as quickly as possible into the compartment of the car. And I did that 4 times. I would fire, and the recoil would kick me back. Excuse me. And then I would let the shotgun slide through my hand. It would slide from the trigger guard. It would slide all the way up to the front fore end, and then I would pinch the butt of the weapon with my thighs, and then reached up with my good hand and rack the action. And then I would put my hand back down on the trigger guard, bring it back up around, put it on the lip, and fire. I did that 4 times, and I accomplished my mission. I thought I had actually just obliterated the guys inside the compartment, the inside of the car. Because I put 4 shotgun rounds into the compartment of the car. They didn't move the car. They stopped moving completely. Okay, so I figured, excuse me, I figured those pellets, probably penetrated the passenger side window, and just like, turned them into hamburger. Okay, at, at autopsy, not one single pellet hit the subjects. I was amazed. I was absolutely amazed that not one. We were shooting 12 pellet Magnum. Each one of those rounds had 12 pellets in it, the double up pellets. That's 12 times 5 is 60 pellets. Not one single pellet hit the subjects. I was amazed. I'm thinking, how the hell can that happen? So it just goes to show you that, bullets and projectiles don't always do what you think they're going to do. So at that point, I'm thinking, hey, this thing is over. They're gone. They're toasted. Okay, that's the only time that I took my attention off the subjects. Okay, and I had my back up against the car, and the only time I took my attention off the subjects to the left is when I turned around and looked at the right, and across the street, looking at not Gilbert Arantia and Ron Reiser, who were across the street. I focused on them, and I took my right hand and I went like this, like, come on over. I said, it's okay, come on over. And they're yelling back, stay down, stay down. And it registered on me. I'm thinking, stay down. It's like, holy shit, they don't know the gunfight's over. And then I looked past them, and I saw a perimeter on the north side of the street. And then I looked south, and I saw another perimeter on the south side of the street. The Metro Dade had set up a perimeter, and behind the perimeter, there on both sides, there must have been 20 ambulances and fire engines waiting, because they couldn't come in. There was a gunfight going on in the middle of the street, and they had set up a perimeter, and they weren't coming in until they knew the gunfight was over, until the danger was over. And I'm thinking, holy shit, we are going to die. Okay, because at that point, I was starting to seriously lose consciousness. I was reaching a point where it's like, okay, man, this is not a good thing. I went from, hey, listen, amputate your arm today, to a point where it's like, hey, I'm gonna die today. There's a slight difference between amputate your arm and I'm a dead man. So, but I kept having to shake my head more and more to stay awake, because I was actually, if you look at my head, I was actually doing this. I was like, I have to, have to shake myself awake, and it was like, holy cow. But when the agents across the street said, stay down, and I saw the perimeter, I said, we are going to die. And something miraculous happened there. It's kind of miraculous, but maybe it's also scary. I tell people, I said, hey, and I kind of jest and joke about it, but it wasn't a joke at the time. I tell people, I said, I had a conversation with God, and it's the honest to God's truth. And I've learned since that there's been the study made about of ill people and like long-term sick people, cancer victims. They go through 5 stages of survival and death. The first one is anger, denial, acceptance, bargaining, depression. That's not the right order, but that's what they are. And I went through 4 of those steps. Okay, I didn't go through depression, because I went through those 4 steps in like a second, I think. First was like denial. It's like, I'm not injured. And then it was anger. It's like, oh, god damn it, I'm injured. The third step for me was anger. It's like, God, it's like, and then I went to bargaining. Okay. that's when I was talking to God. I said, God, kind of like in The Godfather, hey, can you get me out of this for old time's sake? No can do, Polly. No can do. So God said, no can do, Ed. No can do. So at that point, honest to God, I said, I said, I'm going to die. I accepted the fact that I was going to die. Okay. And once I went through those first three steps, you know, denial, anger, uh, bargaining, and then I got to a point of acceptance. Okay. And you know what? It was a transformation. I accepted the fact that I was going to die. And you know what? All fear left. I mean, I became very tranquil. I mean, I was just like absolutely calm. I mean, before I was angry and fighting and pissed and everything else, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you know what? What's there to worry about? It's no big deal. You know, and of course, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm like trying to stay awake. So even though I accepted death, I also still had a spark of survival in me. I'm thinking, half of me is accepting death. The other half is saying, no, don't go to sleep. Fight, keep fighting, keep fighting. Reminds me of that, the poem, do not go gentle into that good night. Do not, rage against the dying of the light, and that's what was happening. It's like in fighting, So I, the part of me that wanted to live, said, hey, you know what? I've got to demonstrate to these people. There's like literally like 200 people around me, 200 law enforcement officers, firefighters and stuff around me, and nobody's coming in to help. I said, I have got to do something to demonstrate to these guys that it's safe to come in here. And the only way I knew to be able to demonstrate that to them was to stand up. Okay. Because, like I said, nobody knew the gunfight was over. Now, if anything happened when I'm going through this, it's okay, come on over. God, can you get me out of this for old time's sakes? One of those things. The whole time I took my attention off the subjects. Okay, but there was a witness across the street, Sidney Martin. I'm sorry, Sidney Martin was across the street. He saw Platt get out of the driver's seat with a revolver in his left hand, walk up to within 10 or 12 feet of me and fire down at my position with the revolver. Okay. And then he saw him stagger back to the driver's position and get back in the car. I never heard the shots. I never saw Platt because I was looking at the agents across the street. Okay. Sidney Martin saw and heard the shots. Gordon McNeil, who was on the ground, paralyzed, heard the shots and saw the street, the tar, the macadam of the street actually take the ricochet hits from where the rounds hit, and he said it just spurred up, asphalt and stuff. So he saw the results of the missed shots, and he heard the gunfire, but I never heard it. So as far as I knew it was no harm, no foul, So right after that is when I decided to stand up and to demonstrate to all the officers around us that it was, excuse me, that it was okay to come in. So I said, you know what? I need to ensure make doubly sure that these guys are dead. Okay, so and that's when I decided to turn around towards the threat, and I came out from behind the car. I had the my revolver in my right hand, and I took 2 steps forward and set a position, and I brought the weapon up to eye level. Found the sights, and I fired a shot at the driver. Missed. Took 2 steps forward, set my position, fired at the driver a second time, hit him in the forehead. And the autopsy showed that the round hit him on the forehead and then went under his skin and just didn't penetrate the skull. Took 2 steps forward, found the sights, shot at the passenger and hit him. I forget, hit him in the face somewhere. Took 2 more steps forward, set my position, shot the passenger a second time. Took 2 steps forward. Excuse me. and set my position and fired at the passenger a third time, and took 2 steps forward, and I was right at the door, and I knew I had 1 round left over, so I shot the driver, in the upper chest area. And this round actually, weird how positions, uh, have a lot to do with the trajectory of a bullet. Uh, that bullet, because of the way he was laying, I shot him in the chest, but the trajectory actually went up into his neck as opposed to straight through his chest. It was just kind of weird, it's just the way his body was positioned. I shot him in the chest, but the round goes up and hits him right in the neck vertebrae. Okay. And that was my sixth shot. Okay. And that round crushed his vertebrae in his neck, and it just paralyzed him at that point in time. So he couldn't move any anything at all. Even his head was just stuck. And that was the end of the gunfight, pretty much, except for the crazy pandemonium of 200 cops coming in to help. So it was a pretty intense gunfight. Estimated number of shots fired was 140 to 150 shots, and the shots were fired in an area. If you can look at your mind's eye and imagine a half court, a basketball court, but only a half court. Okay, that's how small the area was. There were all those cars, and there were 10 men shooting at each other in an area the size of a half court, a basketball court. Okay, the gunfight lasted approximately. They estimate anywhere from 4 to 4.5 minutes. It kind of varies back and forth depending on how you time it and so on. But they said it went from 4.5, maybe 5 minutes towards the very end, and it was pretty intense. Out of the 10 participants, eight agents and 2 bad guys, 9 of the 10 participants were either wounded or killed outright. Okay, so that's a 90% hit rate, and unfortunately, Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove were killed, and the 2 subjects were also killed. So I was shot twice. McNeil was shot twice. John Hanlon was shot 3 times, once in the right hand, and then once in each thigh. And Ben was shot twice, and Jerry Dove was shot twice. He was actually 3 times. He was shot twice in the head, which is the shots that killed him. And then Richard Manauzi and Gilbert Arantia got peppered with shrapnel, with the rounds coming through the cars. And when the rounds hit something in the car that caused them to shatter, they kept coming through like a shotgun blast and peppered them in various spots, with shrapnel. So they were not. Those 2 agents did not receive an actual rifle round going through their body. They received the shrapnel. So, but it's still, I mean, shrapnel is shrapnel. It's like getting hit with a shotgun pellet. So, but at the end, it was about a total of 5 minutes. Platt was shot 12 times from shotgun, 9mm rounds, and 38 caliber rounds. Okay, he literally was shot to pieces, and Maddox was shot 6 times. 5 times to the head and neck, and 1 time to the right wrist area. I've been asked, why did they have more magazines? They had, if you saw some of the crime scene photos that I present in my lectures, they had 5 additional 30-round magazines in their little equipment bag. And the question's been asked, why didn't they use the additional magazines? Okay, and I can only speculate that they didn't use the magazines because they were shot to pieces. That's the bottom line. Okay, Platt was shot through his right arm, his right upper arm and chest. He was shot across the arm in this fashion. It broke his radial bone and severed the tendons that function these two fingers, the thumb and the index finger. Uh, Plus, he had severe arterial bleeding, and Maddox took a hit to the brachial plexus, which is up here in your shoulder. It severed the brachial uh, vein and artery, the artery that services your right arm, and it severed the nerve bundles that service the arm. So, in my opinion, they had 5 additional 30-round magazines, but they could not make their hands function, their arms function enough to be able to manipulate the magazines and insert them into the rifle. Okay, because that's the only answer I have. Because why did he get out of the car with a revolver in his left hand? Okay, because his right side was shot to pieces. So, I mean, that's my speculation. So I don't know if you have any questions
No,
about that
I
at all.
I would agree. I think that that revolver was already loaded. That was kind of his last ditch effort, and that's what happened. Now, the thing that affected me the most in your story, and I could really feel the emotion in it, was when you said you were going to send these guys to hell and join them later on.
Well, see, what? Again, I was having that schizophrenic conversation. First I had a conversation with God. God said, "Hey, you know what? I can't help you. You're on your own,
But
pal."
then a few seconds later,
No,
stop those
but
6 rounds.
a few seconds later, I'm thinking, okay, I accepted death. I was like, okay. So then I start going into a schizophrenic conversation. Tranquility and peace. It's like a Coke commercial. Like, hey, we are the world, or whatever, whatever song that is in the Coke commercial from the '80s. You know, but the other half of me was like angry. It's like, fight, keep fighting, keep fighting. And I was literally having a schizophrenic conversation with myself. It's okay. Go take it easy. Rest. It's okay to take a nap. The other side of me is saying, no, no, keep fighting. Keep fighting. So, it just kept going back and forth. But you know what? I said, hey, you know what? If I'm going to die, which I had accepted the death, I am going to make sure that these two bastards die with me. If I have to take them to hell myself, I'm going to make sure they go to hell. Okay, and that's a nice Christian thought. It's in one of the Bibles, I think. I forget, maybe it's the Devil's Bible. I don't know, but it's the honest to God's truth. There was raw emotion, absolutely raw emotion there.
Absolutely. So all this is done. You move on with your career. The big point of this is because you said there's been a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks. There's been a lot of people that says, what does this change for the FBI?
Oh, it was huge, 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 huge. Uh, for brevity's sake, I will just hit the high points. Jerry Dove shot Platt in what I describe in my book and in my lectures as he made $1 million shot on Platt. Platt was a moving target. Platt was moving from Jerry Dove's left to his right. Okay, and when he exposed his right side to Jerry's position, he exposed himself in a 3-foot wide window. Okay, that's how narrow the window was. Okay, and Platt was moving from left to right. Jerry Dove made $1 million shot on Platt's center mass. Okay, and that round went through his brachial artery in his right arm, penetrated his right lung, and center mass straight towards the heart. Unfortunately, the round did not reach the heart. It stopped about an inch short of Platt's heart. Okay, now that injury or that shot would change ballistics forever. Okay, that round or the lack of satisfactory results caused the FBI to take a serious, hard look at ballistics. Excuse me. Up until that time, I think law enforcement agencies and maybe even the military to some extent would take the word of gun, not gun, bullet makers, bullet manufacturers. They would take their word for their bullet performance. I mean, everybody had testing to some sort, some level, but not real detailed testing that the way the FBI did it in 1988, because they couldn't figure out why the round didn't penetrate farther, okay, into Platt's body, okay. And I'm told that that's just the way the round was. The round was designed to do what it did, and I'm told that the round functioned up to its limit. Okay, unfortunately, it was not enough, okay, to stop the gunfight, because after Jerry Dove shot Platt, okay, he continued to fight for an additional 3.5, 4 minutes. Okay, and that hit. I've talked to doctors. That hit on Platt was called a non-survivable hit. Okay, so the problem is, even if it was not survivable, it did not kill him quickly enough. Okay, because after he takes that non-survivable hit, he will continue fighting for an additional 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. Okay, and he will go on and he will injure. He will shoot Jerry Dove twice and kill Jerry Dove. He will shoot John Hanlon 3 times. He will shoot Gordon McNeil a second time, and he will shoot Ben Grogan once, and then he will shoot and kill Ben Grogan. So that is after he took the non-survivable hit. Okay, so he goes on to kill 2 agents and wound 2 more. Okay, and nobody could understand how that was possible. Okay, and it was possible because of several factors. The ballistics was subpar, even though the round performed up to standard, but it just wasn't what law enforcement needed. I mean, we needed another inch or two of penetration, to stop the gunfight. And then the other side of it was the psychology of survival. Okay, if you shoot 9 out of 10 people the way Platt had been shot, 9 out of 10 people will stop. They'll stop fighting, stop resisting. Okay, it's that 1/10, that 1 out of 10 person who had the training, 101st Airborne, the mindset of 101st Airborne, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, fight through the ambush, go to fire, go to contact. Okay, keep moving forward. The way to eliminate a threat is to assault the threat, or flank it, or ambush the ambush. That type of mentality. Okay, so but we've learned that post shooting. Okay, at the time, there were so many unanswered questions. So the ballistics was big. The psychology of survival was big, but that's a harder one to kind of define and to pin down. The other part of it is like, hey, if you have a 6-shot revolver versus a high capacity weapon, a weapon with 15 rounds in a magazine or 30 rounds in a magazine, who has the advantage? Okay, the high capacity magazine shooter has the advantage, because I would have to reload 5 times in a revolver to equal 30 rounds, the 30 rounds in Platt's magazine. Okay, and every time I break eye contact or break contact to reload, okay, that gives the adversary the advantage. He can flank, he can move, he can fire and maneuver while you're down behind cover loading. Okay, so it became obvious that law enforcement needed higher capacity weapons. So it changed ballistics. It changed the weapons use. We went from revolvers to high capacity pistols. Changed ballistics. It caused as I said earlier, it was the birth of the 40 caliber. This incident led to the development of the 40 caliber, the 10 millimeter rounds, that law enforcement used. And for the 40 caliber round was in use in law enforcement for at least the last 20 to 25 years. Okay, now we're going back to the future, as they say. Now law enforcement is going back to the 9 millimeter rounds because I'm told that there's been so much advancement and development and technology that that the 9 millimeter round is equal to or superior to a 40 caliber round now. So that's why I say it's back to the future, because the 9 millimeter round was what caused all the research, and now we're right back to the 9 millimeter round again. So
Well,
in my
eggs
life,
used to be bad for us too. So
yeah, that's what I've heard.
yeah, that
Um,
I think that and I think it'll change again.
yeah, you never know. I mean, pretty soon we'll be shooting lasers, laser pistols. I can't wait, really.
uh, uh, you know, what was your biggest? I guess this would be my final question for you. What would be your biggest takeaway from this? Whether that be to celebrate your life,
Well,
whatever it may be, what's your biggest takeaway?
well, my biggest takeaway. I mean, obviously, I'm extremely grateful. I conned God. I told him, hey, listen, I'm a good bad guy. I mean, you can put your money on me. I'll start going to church every day, not every day, every week. And then of course, I cut it down to once a month, and then I cut it down to every 6 months. And now I'm back to where I was before. So I kind of reneged on my side of the deal. No, I'm just kidding on that though. So, but my biggest takeaway is what I teach or try to teach cops and recruits over the last 30 years. Um, there is such a thing as luck. Okay, even though you may not want to call it luck. Okay, the Bible calls it time and chance. It's from Ecclesiastes 9:11. The race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor fortune to men of skill. But time and chance happen to them all. Okay, and that's a fancy way of saying luck. Okay, and again, I tell officers, you can't plan operations, you can't plan your life on luck. Okay, um, but sometimes you have to make your own luck. Sometimes Louis Pasteur said, "Hey, you know what? Chance favors the prepared mind." Okay, and what does that mean? Okay, chance favors the prepared mind. How do we prepare? We prepare with training. Okay, I'm a big proponent of training, 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 training. If you're not working and you're not on vacation with your family, you need to be training somewhere, whether it's book training or firearms training or tactical training of car stuff or something. Okay. I know the military does a lot of training. I mean, like I said, when they're not deployed doing something, they're training. Okay. And law enforcement officers need to train because like Pasteur said, hey, chance favors the prepared mind. So I've told officers over the course of many, many years, it's like, hey, time and chance happens to us all, but chance favors the prepared mind, and that goes right back to training. And with the training, the purpose of training is to help you solve problems. Okay, I mean that's what training is all about. Um, you can't solve a problem if you've never solved the problem. Okay. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's almost like a self-explanatory, self-explanatory answer. You can't you can't learn how to solve a problem until you solve problems. Okay, and training is that problem-solving venue, that we can make mistakes in and stuff like that. So I always tell officers, the takeaway is try to get as much training as possible, either on your own or through a department. And then the other aspect of it is the you never give up. Never ever give up. Okay, that is the will to survive. Like I've told people in the past, I can give you training, I can give you lectures, your departments can give you guns and ammo and cars and radios, but nobody on this planet can give you the will to survive. That has to come from the individual himself and herself. The will to survive has to come from you. Okay, and that will, again, is going back to training and preparation. Okay, if you learn how to prepare, or you prepare, for any eventuality. Okay, your will to survive, or your survivability is quadrupled, quintupled. It just is magnified over someone who doesn't train at all. So that's the takeaway. Never give up, train, and it never hurts to be a little bit lucky. By
Well,
the way, in case people don't know, I mean, you're looking at the Lotto winner, the World Series winner, and the World Cup winner, and so on for 1986. Okay, you're looking at them right here,
yeah.
because the way I was shot, the way I was shot was just an absolute incredible. I can't do it justice on the video here, but I was shot straight on, okay, with an M16 round, 223 caliber, and my arm was directly in front. I just happened to move my arm literally up like that at the last possible moment, and the round hit me right here, as opposed to hitting me in the chest. It hit my arm. Okay, I couldn't do that again in a million years.
That's
And like I said, it never hurts to be a little bit lucky.
Well, Ed, you have an amazing story. I'm so honored that you took time to come on here and tell me about it. Guys, if you want to pick up this book, and I highly suggest you do, it's FBI Miami Firefight: 5 Minutes That Changed the Bureau. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can also go to edmireles.com, pick it up there. You can also learn more about him there. He is also a person that goes around and lectures. He does training, all those things that he just mentioned. You guys need to check him out. It's an honor to meet you. It's just a pleasure to hear your story and everything that you've done for law enforcement. So, guys, that's going to be it for tonight. If you want more of me, you can find me on Twitter at DoublespeakDJ. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD Podcast, and you can find me on YouTube at the DTD Podcast. Remember, guys, you stop by here every week because the best stories are true, and we give them to you. That's Ed. I'm DJ. That's been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.